Hey, everybody. Welcome to this episode of the Marketing Guides for Small Businesses podcast. Today, I'm joined by Ian, Jen, and Paul, and we are going to be talking about user-generated content. What is it, and how the heck do you get it? This is something that if a business can solve for this equation and get user-generated content, it can add massive value to their marketing, and it makes marketing easy. So if we can help you guys figure this out today, then mission accomplished. And so I think we're going to have a lot of interesting conversations. Uh, I think user-generated content is really gold from many businesses, and really it doesn't make any difference what type of business you have. When you get somebody to become a brand ambassador and sharing content about your business, it doesn't get any better than that. So let's just hop right in. Jen, what is user-generated content and why is it so important?
Why is it so important? Well, I just want to jump off on something that you just said is when you have a brand ambassador and they get sharing your content. But this is unpaid. They're not affiliates. They're
Right.
not paid to promote you. They're not earning anything. You didn't ask, didn't have a deal with them. They're doing this on their own, which is so amazing. And that's what's so neat about it.
Yeah.
So user-generated content, much like many of the things we have here in our marketing discipline, it's a big name, but it really means that your customers or clients, whatever you call them, but your customers are either sharing tips, sharing different ways of using your product or service, sharing feedback, sharing the actual content that you produce. And this is typically out, digital is what we're talking about, really probably mostly in social media. It could be through email and that kind of thing. But usually when we refer to user-generated content, it's not the kind of thing where I find something and then I email it to you, Ken. It's the kind of thing that's done more publicly. Like I find something, I have a tip on how to use, a certain piece of software differently, and I'm sharing it publicly with the world, either to go, look how smart I am. We can do this with the software, or here's a tip, or I found this thing that was really a problem, and this is how this piece of software solved it. So the content is out for public consumption. And it is something that I, as the user, do on my own. So that's what it is. Why it's so important is it's just so really, it's really valuable. So there's a couple different things about that. One, it can show your customers or your potential customers different ways to use your product. It can also show some of the emotional attachment that somebody has to your product or service, which is really beautiful when you get that done organically. And so that's why I wanted to make the point at the beginning. This is not paid. They're not making money on the back end for it. They're doing it out of I want to say the goodness of their heart, but it's kind of like they're motivated to share something that they found, like another use for it, or this was helpful, or I love this so much.
Yeah.
So that would be user-generated content.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. So Ian leaves just as I was getting ready to ask the question of him.
It's my new thing. As soon as you ask a question, I'm gonna leave the room.
So I think there are ways to ask people to provide user-generated content, and one of those ways we frequently talk about, and again, it's not a paid thing, but you can still ask. And one of those great ways is to ask for online reviews. So, Ian, how does a business go about nailing the process of asking for online reviews and getting that user-generated content using a review channel?
Yeah, and I must be like the review guy on this podcast because I know I talk a lot about them. But I really do love helping businesses generate more online reviews because they're so vital for ranking on Google and for showing social proof that you deliver on your promises as a business. The first thing a business must do, and this is really true with any user-generated content. Like, there are industries where people are more apt to leave you stuff even without you asking, just because it's very experiential. But for many things, we as businesses need to be proactive. We need to ask people to be involved, to kind of take up the banner Let us know what their experience is like. And reviews are a very good example of that. So you have to be proactive. You can't be passive about it, especially with reviews, because you won't get many. The statistics are so clear, and they've changed over the years, but they've only gotten more pronounced, meaning that statistics show that only 6% of people, of customers, leave unsolicited reviews. So you have to actually ask people. Because they forget once, especially with things like, you've been at a restaurant or you purchased a product, you're now living your life with that experience behind you, and you forget about it, even though it was a really good experience. So the first thing is to be proactive. And asking for reviews for many businesses feels uncomfortable. Because it's first of all, it's putting yourself out there. You don't want the negative reviews. None of us do. But we do need to hear back from customers.
Right.
And so we need to overcome that. And one of the ways we can overcome this feeling of discomfort in asking people to tell us what they think about us as a business is to actually have a review funnel system whereby as customers go through your business, they're basically automatically asked to leave reviews. So, ways I've seen that working really well is, old school kind of brick and mortar stuff. You can have a business card with a QR code where people take their phone, they take a picture of the QR code, it takes them to a review page, and then they give a star rating. The other option is, posters within your checkout area of wherever you are, whether it's a restaurant, a dental clinic, whatever it might be, a store of some kind, where there's a physical location. And then there's the digital versions, which work extremely well, where you have a drip campaign where you consistently, over a period of several days, you reach out to that customer and you say, hey, thanks so much for choosing us. We'd really like to hear about your experience with us. Please click on this link to leave us a review. And so email has been the most common way of doing that. And text now, SMS texting is an even better option because it gets, 90% response rate, whereas email's lower than that. So lots of options for you, but be sure to be persistent, like ask several times, and be sure to respond to the reviews. Like that's another part of user-generated content is you don't want crickets when people actually do proactively do something on behalf of your business, whether it's negative or positive. You need to handle that appropriately. And a little bit dispassionately, especially if it's a negative. You might even want to have a third party like your marketing agency handle some of that stuff because they can do it a little bit more appropriate and they understand the impact to your business without getting your hackles up or anything like that. Is hackles a term that everybody uses?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, and negative reviews can be turned into a positive too if you do it in the right way. So that's certainly something to keep in mind. So Paul, let's come to you. Do you have a ninja way to generate viral referrals?
Well, I guess the first thing we need to talk about is what's a viral referral or a viral loop, and it drives referrals for growth or continuous referrals for growth. And one of the best ways to do that is with a text messaging platform. And trying to figure out the best way to say this, but you get your customers to refer you, and that just kind of feeds on itself, and that's where the viral part of it comes in, and it just feeds on itself. So you turn your customers into fans that promote your business, and whether it's through text messaging, that's the best way to do it, but it just creates this viral loop, and that's what it's called.
Yeah, I mean, I think a key component of this is gamification. So you actually give people the ability to earn rewards and points toward something that they perceive as value. It could be discounts. It could be, giving them free merchandise, shirts, hats, whatever. But the key thing is you want to give people a reason and an incentive to share content. So, you share a link to an offer
Yeah.
that,
I was going to go into that a little bit later.
Okay. All right. So yeah, it's a really important thing. Gamification is something that we probably haven't ever really talked about on this podcast, but it's basically just trying to make something more compelling, make it a little bit of a game where people and a little bit of a challenge. And if you structure that properly, you can see some really nice viral kinds of things happening. So now we are going to move to the experimental section of this podcast. Jen, I'm going to ask you a question, and Jen has recorded an answer by video, and we're going to test this out as a way to see how this technology works on StreamYard. So the question I asked Jen is, how can a sports nutrition focused business get user generated content? And I asked her to give me, some examples of that. So let's see what happens here.
So how can a sports nutrition or a nutrition brand get some user generated content? Well, it's really funny because typically food products, drinks, they lend themselves to personal preferences. You just got to think, you just got to go for breakfast, lunch, or dinner or a snack with anybody. And you're going to immediately find out like, oh, I like this. I don't like that. I never eat this. This is too salty, whatever, right? Like people can't help but tell you their personal preferences around, around food, around drinks. So it's an easy category to get that kind of personalization. So what you see in sports nutrition user generated content. So if we're sticking to the food part of it, and what I mean by that is because typically within sports nutrition, that area, some of the user generated content, goes over to different types of workout. How strong am I? How fast am I? Competition, funny things going on in the gym or on the football field or whatever sport it is that your users are doing their own thing. But if you think right about that product, right, what comes to mind is recipes. And I know recipes and sharing the recipes and your own personal recipe has been around for like way before social media, obviously. But that is one way to really think, oh, user generated content. Oh, like recipes, like my own twist on this kind of recipe. So in sports nutrition, if you think about that being like a protein shake, so there are many, many people that are like, okay, well, you add this much water, or I add ice, or we do this this vegetable to the protein shake, or we do this flavoring, or this, or however they do it, and it's all personalized. And then they want to share it on typically on social media, online, about their own personal recipe. And it can be the form of it's what they like, or they found this product a little too sweet, so here's how you sweeten it up. A little too bland, here's how you add some different flavor to it. Whatever, here's how you keep it cold for a long time if you have to travel a long way before you're at your sporting events or your gym or whatever. So the very nature of it being like a consumable typically lends itself to like personal preferences. And most people, I don't know, we're funny as humans. We we want to talk a lot about what we like or what we have found works better. So those kind of areas or those kind of categories really lend themselves easily to user generated content. So a few different ways you can get that kind of content from your folks is ask, what are you doing with your protein shake? How do you do this cereal? How do you do this? How do you do that? What's your favorite way to, right? Insert the blank. What's neat and this can happen in any industry, and but I guess it's very familiar. I mean, we all have to eat, so it's very familiar to do that kind of example with a food product. Is there could be different uses for it. So if we stick to protein drinks, you think, okay, protein powder in a blender and water or juice or milk, whatever you want, throw in some vegetables or some fruit or whatever it is, right? But oh my goodness, why don't we put a scoop of protein powder into pancakes? And then now our pancakes, instead of being super carb heavy, have a lot of protein in it. Oh, neat. For many people, I mean, there's companies that there's pancake mix companies now that are focused on protein pancakes. But if you go back a little while, that never used to happen. So there is ways that people are using or come up with different uses of your product that can open up a whole other market for you, open up a whole other category for you. Back, I think we're going back maybe 20 years now, maybe more. That's how the Frappuccino at Starbucks started. I mean, when you say user-generated content, I mean, it was employees that came up with it, but they were, what they were doing? They were messing around with some ice and some coffee and just, blending up something that was, had a bit of, a different flavor to it, and boom, the Frappuccino was born. So the very same thing can happen for your product or service if you kind of let your customers kind of be mad scientists with it. So I think it's a great thing, and there's always people that want to share. Like, look what I did. Look how I did this. Look how I solved this problem. Look how delicious, my recipe for this or that is. So it's a category that really lends itself to having your customers give their 2 cents into how they're using it and what works best for them.
Okay, so that worked better than expected, actually. And so, Jen, in that answer, actually, it makes me think about there is a very distinct possibility that user-generated content would put your product in a negative light. And I think about like Tide Pods or something like that. So, I think it's paramount that you can't just turn it on and hope that it goes. And if you're getting user-generated content, it's always going to be great and positive for your business. You need to be monitoring this, and you need to be understanding what people are saying about your business. But anyway, anything else that you want to add to that answer, or Paul or Ian? Any thoughts on that?
That was a long answer for sure, but yeah, I did focus on the positives, but you're absolutely right about the negatives. So any kind of food product, someone gets anything really, something gets delivered. You see now, I mean, with all the home deliveries of virtually everything, right? There's people don't hesitate to put their front door cameras, the film footage online about like, look how this delivery driver, look how nice they were to my my plants or whatever. Look how terrible they were. They just threw it there. So you have to be ready for it for sure. So you just got to know that in this day and age, everybody's going to give their opinions, and really it's kind of your daily report card on how you're doing.
Yeah. Well, and I think, we used a video where you provided an answer, but we could have very easily inserted a video from somebody who had an experience with one of our businesses about, something in a live stream like this, where you're not only are you demonstrating your product knowledge or expertise or solution knowledge or expertise, but now you can pull in user-generated content into a live flow like this. So, whether they're live or whether you insert a video like we just did. So definitely keep that in mind for user-generated content opportunities as well. Ian, time for you to go hide, because I'm going to ask you another question.
Okay, there we go.
All right,
here we go. All right, so some businesses have a real challenge when it comes to getting user-generated content, just by the nature of their business. And in fact, some businesses probably are prohibited from even asking for user-generated content. Can you talk about the types of businesses that should go all in for user-generated content versus some businesses that probably should largely stay away from it?
Yeah, absolutely. And some of this is from personal experience, what I've come across in my journey of creating user generated content for clients. But before I talk about who should go all in, I think it's good to talk a little bit about some of the industries where you need to be super careful. Industries that sometimes prohibit the asking and posting of user generated content as a business. That doesn't mean the users can't post content. So I want to make that very clear. There is nothing in any authoritative body that says that your customers, your clients, or your patients can't post content online. Of course, that's their own liability
Right.
as the customer, but they can put up whatever they want. But in many industries, the professional cannot ask or solicit that content. And a lot of times it's because the authoritative body says, hey, and I'll explain one industry that I came across this, and it actually was very surprising to me. And that was the veterinarian industry. I was working with a veterinarian, and that in this province where the veterinarian was, the authoritative body said you cannot ask for reviews, you cannot ask for anything, nor post it from customers, because you really, they weren't even supposed to post like pictures of the dogs or anything, because whatever would frame them as a better veterinarian than another veterinarian that this authoritative body governs, they said that's not appropriate for the public, which is crazy, right? We as consumers,
That sounds like
we're all
Facebook.
yeah, I mean, as consumers, we're like, but that's ridiculous. I want to know who the best veterinarian is for my dog, who cares the most, who posts pictures of the dog. But so fields that you have to be super careful in. There's probably tons of them, but veterinarians, some dental stuff, some medical stuff, lawyers is always a touchy area, which makes sense. But I always recommend that a business check with their governing body to understand what they can and can't do. Some governing bodies simply slap your hand if you do something. Others, you could get punitive damages against you because now they're trying to say, oh, you did something against our rules. We're trying to create a common rule set for all people in this industry. You need to pay up, resolve these issues, and pay up. Having said that, let's look at the positive side. So industries that could absolutely rock this, Jen touched on this in her video, is anything where you're having an experience, you're eating something, drinking something, going down a flume ride, going on a plane, anything you're experiencing as a person or your customers are experiencing, that's perfect. Even things like if you're shipping something, unboxing, it's not quite as popular as it was, but that was huge for years, and people are still very interested in that, especially with new products. Like when Beats brings out a new set of headphones, people love watching the first person unbox that thing and talk about it, or a new iPhone or whatever it is. And those are great examples of user generated content. Other industries, though, that are less, you would think less of them, or you would think less that it would be applicable for them, are even things like orthodontists. We see it all the time where they're doing before and after shots of people, or they're taking, the reveal after somebody gets their braces off. Those are great examples. Electricians, I see electricians getting this stuff all the time, and it's fantastic. Or contractors, where somebody has a before and after video of their home or their office. So there's tons and tons of options. Restaurants, I said eating before, but that's such an easy slam dunk. Like, get those people to share their experience, and it's gonna go across the web.
Yeah. I think anything dealing with lifestyle, entertainment, just naturally, if you're in an industry that is like that, and lifestyle, getting a new roof on a house, that can be a lifestyle kind of a thing. It may not seem like it at first, but eating, sports nutrition, wellness, all of those things.
Can
Paul,
I share one more example? So this one just came to mind as you were talking, Ken. Elon Musk and his Starlink satellites for getting rural internet.
Yeah.
So I actually know someone who has a rural property. They have a home in Toronto, but they have a rural property way out there, and they were on the early list to get a Starlink internet system. And so, like, immediately after they got it, they were posting photos of the cool dish thing, about their experience. And that's exactly what Starlink wanted, right? They wanted people to be able to see, wow, this is life-changing, and this is an actual user that's sharing this with people. So sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I just thought that was a good example.
Yeah, no, that is a great example. So, Paul, we kind of touched upon this a little bit earlier, but talk about how a business could use either hashtags like in a digital way, or even their physical store or their packaging, like Ian talked about in the unboxing, to really help facilitate and encourage people to create that user-generated content.
Yeah, like I said, Ian did kind of touch on this, but on as far as hashtags, Instagram is probably the best place to do that. And what a lot of brands are doing is they're creating a hashtag and encouraging their audience to share that hashtag. And you have to get the right content to share, because it has to be content that someone wants to share. And as far like Ian touched on, ask for reviews. You have to ask for reviews because people aren't going to do it. The unboxing part of it, this is all user generated content. And if you have a physical location, you can put up a sign right there, or have your office people ask someone to leave a review, because they're not going to do it. Like Ian said, people being irritated is a more powerful motivator. So people are more likely to leave negative reviews. So you have to ask them, say, hey, if you like the service, can you leave us a review, and make it easy. And that's, one thing we do is when we send out review requests, or whether our clients send out review requests, all they have to do is click on a link and it opens up that review box on Google. They don't have to go find it. And one of the things is surveys. People love surveys, and BuzzSumo says, the average survey gets shared like 1,900 times or something like that. And surveys are a great way to generate that, because you can take those survey questions, either make it anonymous or make sure you get their permission, and you can use those survey responses, and that's user-generated content. And this goes back to the first point, the viral loop thing, is that when people share these surveys, that creates this viral content, these viral loops. So like Ian said, a lot of it is just asking people, because they're not going to do it if you don't. It's not that they don't want to, they just don't think about it.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think surveys, quizzes, I think it was really, that I saw that statistic as well. I think it pertained to quizzes, and you think about it, somebody takes a quiz and they learn something about themselves. They may very well want to share that on social media, and so that can be super, super viral. I also think back, when I wrote the Social Media Marketing for Restaurants book, one of the things that Nina Radidich, had experienced with working with her businesses, and she did business, new restaurant launches in Las Vegas. They actually created selfie stations, where people would bring their food over and take a selfie with that, and there was a designated part of the physical space of the restaurant. Retail stores could do this as well, where you encourage people, give people guidance on what hashtags you want them to use. You know what? For 99% of us, brand hashtags don't mean or help us at all because nobody knows to search for those. So you want to leverage popular hashtags. So incorporating a brand hashtag in, by all means, consider that, do that, but also leverage the real hashtags that people are naturally using to search for. It could be location-based hashtags. It could be, lifestyle or product-related type hashtags. But the key thing is, I think if you really take advantage of your physical packaging or your physical store and guide people and make it easier for them to give you the user-generated content that's going to be the most valuable for you.
Yeah, and you have to promote those hashtags, whether it's through packaging or whatever, because there's like 100 billion hashtags out there.
Yeah.
You don't know what to search for. People don't know what to search when it comes to hashtags. So yes, a hashtag is kind of a search phrase or a keyword, but they don't know specifically what to search for. But if you create, and a lot of the bigger brands are doing this, if you create a hashtag and then you promote that hashtag, now people know to search for it. And you can use your packaging to do that. You can use your, like you just said, your physical space to promote those things. And yeah, I forgot about the whole selfie thing that Nina did, which was a really good idea.
Well, and Brooke Patterson, who we all know from our involvement with Duct Tape Marketing, one of the things that she offered through her business is actually branding of the inside of a physical space. I mean, that was actually a solution that they had in place, and I know that they factored in those kinds of things to just make it. I mean, if you think about the design of your space, it's probably just going to help to facilitate people wanting to take the actions that you want them to do anyway. So, make that a conscious part of your design. Jen, let's talk about B2B and professionals. How do you recommend that they would get user-generated content? As Ian mentioned, a lot of those professions have limitations. I mean, in the US here, for example, up until May of 2021, financial advisors could not ask for reviews.
Yeah.
There are medical professions that have to be super careful about HIPAA requirements, where people might share individual health information. So, or the business, certainly has to be very protective of that. So talk about your experience with B2B and professionals.
Sure. B2B. It's funny because with B2B, it's so interesting because so I don't get this when I talk to B2C brands, but B2B and the customers, one of the hesitations has been the stuff I'm buying. So let's talk about software. Some of the software that we're buying to run our company, I don't want my competitor knowing that we're using this. So why am I going to give you a song and dance, even though I think it's great and I renew it all the time and everything's great, I don't want anybody to know I'm using this.
Yeah.
So that sometimes happens. That often, I'm just thinking here, we often hear that across different B2B industries. Like, why would I give away my secret sauce of how we're doing this? But if you think about this, and probably all of us have gone, either are using, say, Excel or Google Sheets, and you're pulling your hair out and you go onto YouTube to figure out how you're supposed to do this one thing because the help documentation is no help, right? 9 times out of 10, I would bet you, I'm going to put money on that the episode that comes up is going to be someone not from Microsoft, not from Google, some kind of power user who has figured out how to do this drop the down thing in Excel or how to make the sheet finally do what you want to do. And it'll be 60 seconds to 90 seconds, and it'll be exactly what you want to know. And that is user-generated content. So if you can get to that, that's absolutely golden. But I bet you everybody, at least on this podcast or listening, has gone there to find out that kind of information. So one of the things that could help with B2B, and we have tried this. We haven't noticed the success of that, but we have piqued interest in people about this. Is as it's so important in your own industry. I'm going to go on a bit of a rant here, but I'll bring it home, I promise. As everybody in their industry needs to be, their own advocate for their own professionalism and their own expertise and whatnot, showing how to do something within your industry can lead to your own expertise. So if we bring it back to that person who is doing the YouTube video about how to do this complicated thing in Excel, and that person is, very much working with, say, financial documents and financial models every day, doing that kind of content and putting it out there, even though it is, say, in this example, one small thing in Excel, is working to lift their own professional status and their own expertise in their industry. So that can be another way to talk to your customers about, helping to generate the content for you. It's not only, of course, it feels self-serving to the brand, but it can also help with your professional, your company, raising the profile of the expertise in your area as well.
Yeah, so I'm thinking, like if you're a software provider, encouraging user groups, to create content that can be shared across the community, just helps with adoption rates. It helps with stickiness factor because they're seeing people, they're getting the experience, they're getting their problem solved, and these are already natural allies. I mean, they formed a user group, to actually to spend time with other people talking about your solution. So, so I think there are ways that you could leverage something like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, Ian, we talked a little bit maybe about this, and there he goes again. From a brand perspective, how can you protect your brand, but still get that user generated content and build brand ambassadors? I mean, it's a tricky thing, but what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Let me start off by saying, as a former corporate, I love how some other marketers I know call themselves corporate refugees. They used to be in the corporate world. They escaped its clutches. But as a former corporate marketer, who especially was part of the early days of social media marketing, a lot of the brands I was involved in would not allow ourselves as brands to open the doors to any kind of, they were even hesitant to have a social media presence at all, or to ask for reviews, anything like that, because they knew that the potential, when you ask someone and open up the doors, you potentially are opening up the doors for some percentage of that to be negative. And they were scared of that. But as we've all seen in the industry, as time has gone by, the pros very much outweigh the cons. Jen talked about that a little bit. And so really, anytime you engage customers in social media and provide them with opportunities to share with the world their experience, you are relinquishing some control. And I think that was the big thing in the corporate world is, it was all about control. We have to control the medium. We have to control this platform. And so part of the learning we've all done is that, you have to relinquish some control. You obviously have to be super vigilant in watching what people are posting, responding professionally. If it's on a platform like Google or Facebook, and it's inappropriate, and it goes against policies, you certainly can't, if somebody's just sharing their experience and it was a bad experience, you need to respond appropriately. But then if it's against the policies of Google or Facebook or another platform, there are avenues to try to get those things down. So it's really about, playing within the courts, the playing courts that you find yourself on each of those mediums, being vigilant, protect your brand as best as you can, while empowering customers to share with the world the difference you made in their lives. And so, that's, as a, brand ambassadors, we're talked a little bit about, but those are really your biggest fans. And those are the people you trust the most that are outside of your business, but you trust them the most because they are your biggest fans. So, if you can get them involved, you talked about incentivizing people, if you can do that to try to even grow their involvement, it's a really winning combination and really winning equation.
Yeah, I think we talked about this a couple of episodes ago. If you aren't proactive, first of all, newsflash, we all lost control of marketing years ago. I mean, when the internet started to explode, we lost control and the consumers started to gain more and more control. So if you're not recognizing that, it's time to recognize it. But, if you don't create the message, if you don't have the program, if you aren't proactively asking for reviews or user generated content, and you just let it happen, then you run the risk of the void is going to be filled. And whatever is filled in that void is very likely to be what you don't want it to be. And we talked about this, negative reviews are going to always, if you just let reviews happen, negative reviews are always going to tend to be more negative than positive. So you need to control this. You can control what the proactive measures that you put in place. You can't control what happens, but you can be proactive about it. I guess maybe that's the better way to say it. So, Ian, are there any monitoring tools or anything like that make it easier for people to see what people are saying about a business online?
Yeah, absolutely. Before I answer that though, I wanted to contradict a little bit something you said. You said
Okay.
We all lost control of marketing. I actually don't agree with that. I think it changed. I think it changed because as marketers, we used to be able to control. Imagine we're kayakers, and we used to be able to control the flow of the stream that we kayaked in as businesses. We can no longer control the flow of the stream, but we can certainly control where we take our kayak, how we paddle our kayak. So I wouldn't say it's a total loss of control. I would say
No,
it's
not total.
It's a different way of navigation, just to throw in another boating thing there. Yeah. But going back to your question, so monitoring, there are a ton of good monitoring tools out there that can some of them are omni-channel, which are the ones I would suggest for someone if you're serious about monitoring your reputation across different platforms, social platforms, Google reviews, all of that kind of stuff. An omni-channel review system for monitoring and being able to respond saves a ton of time, makes it easy. It also allows you to build processes within your business with your staff in order to do that. So, you don't necessarily need a dedicated marketer to monitor this stuff. It could be somebody's addition to their job if they have the right system and if they're given some really good guidelines about, hey, when you see a negative review, don't get all upset because you know who this person is. Here are some canned, precast templated responses. You get to choose it, but don't go all crazy on them.
Well, and I think that's important too, to have a response so that other people recognize that you are paying attention and that people's opinions do matter. We can't all eliminate every bad experience that somebody might have, but we can mitigate, the impact of those and show that we're human and recognize that we are trying to do better. And I think that, that's an important consideration.
Yeah,
Paul,
and it's statistically, like as far as if we're talking reviews, like the statistics show that consumers look at both positive and negative reviews because they want to understand, first of all, what are people saying about you negatively? Sometimes, as a consumer, I look at a negative review of a restaurant and I'm like, that's you're way out there. You're crazy. Like to have expectations that a restaurant can even do that, right?
Yeah.
But then it's about how the restaurant responds to that person. Is it Is it in, do they care that the person shared their experience, and are they trying to resolve the issue? And if a business is doing that, I think we as consumers, whether it's B2B, B2C, we care about how people respond, and that actually plays a part in our equation of understanding, the quality and integrity of a business.
Yeah. Paul, what about how can you use user-generated content to help with search engine optimization?
Well, there's actually a few things that you can do. One thing on the technical side, if you will, is that, schema, which is structured data, actually has a UGC tag that search engines recognize. And so that gives search engines new content, relevant content for your business or your brand. And user-generated content also, it helps with SEO, because when people share it, it can create natural backlinks, which, we talk about the importance of backlinks, and user-generated content creates that naturally. And you can also use that from an internal linking perspective. And it helps you rank for long tail keywords, which, we don't think about these things, but user-generated content, when we talk about writing content, the days of keyword stuffing are gone. It'll get you penalized. And Google will tell you write for the user. But as marketers, a lot of times when we write content, sometimes we don't think about that. But user-generated content, they're not looking at it from a marketing perspective. So user-generated content is naturally written for the consumer. They're sharing your brand, what they like about it. And that's, search engines like that, especially Google. They like that. And it helps. We touched on this a lot. It helps with social optimization, because user-generated content tends to happen on social media. So it helps your social profile. And so all those things together boost your SEO.
So do brand mentions actually send signals that are valuable from an SEO perspective?
If you're a big national brand, yes. Or if you're a well-known local brand, it can. If you're unknown, this goes back to something we've talked about in other podcasts, is that if you're unknown, then that's another marketing issue. But if people don't know who you are, then a brand mention isn't going to help you. And, a lot of times when we talk about brand mentions, we think about big, well-known national and international companies, but you can be a well-known brand within your local market. And, we actually have a siding company that we work with that they're well-known. You mention their name, people know who they are. And so, yes, it definitely can, if you have that brand recognition, even if it's just local. But you have to, if you don't have that, then you have to work to create it.
All right. So we're getting close to the time we normally try to wrap up, but I've got to ask one more question. And it's kind of, I'm a little surprised that I haven't heard an answer that includes this yet. And that is the role of contests to help create user-generated content. You guys have any thoughts on that? To me, whenever I hear the word user-generated content, my brain naturally first goes to contest, or this idea of gamification now, with the way that we've got this viral text referral system in place where people can earn awards or points towards, something of value. Contests play kind of the same role. So you guys have any thoughts or ideas about that?
Yeah, I can jump in. I've certainly seen them be very successful. So I would kind of put them into two camps. One is related to the incentives I mentioned previously, or your gamification, Ken, where you have some kind of point system. You give your customers, patients, clients, here's what you can do to earn either ballots in a contest, which I've seen work
Right.
very, very well very often, or you earn points in a system which will get you gift cards or toys or whatever it is, depending on who your clientele is, right? So yeah, absolutely. Again, you need to be careful with this because some systems like Google doesn't want you to even really be asking people for reviews. They don't want you to be incenting reviews. And so you need to be very careful, but absolutely contests are an amazing way to just, get people involved, create excitement, and absolutely. Jen, I think you were going to jump in as well.
Well, I was going to jump in and just say you have to be careful about it because contests appeal to certain people. There's certain people, I think they're very polarizing. Some people, obviously, the ones that go forward with it are really excited about it. Others are just like very much not interested. And I think you have to be a little bit careful in what you're asking the contest participant to do, right? We see a lot of this, share this, then tag 4 friends. Well, I'm sure there's been things you've been tagged on that have nothing to do with you being interested in it. I mean, the whole idea of tag 4 friends, I mean, sure, yes, awareness, but those friends should probably be interested or, a potential customer of the service or product. So I would just say, just be very aware what you're asking your participants to do, especially if you're getting them to lean on their own contacts in order to promote your brand. So just be careful about that.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I've seen that can work really well is, you give people, like Ian talked about, people can either earn points or ballots or votes or whatever. Yeah, you get like 1 if you fill out a form, but you can get like 5 if you record a video with you and showing your experience of that product or explaining why winning would be so important for you. And then now you've got video content, which we haven't really talked a whole lot about here either, but video content, people recognize human faces and that just draws them in. So if you can find a way to get user generated video content, that's really, maybe even the best thing that you can do. The thing I like about the viral referral system that we've put in place is it gamifies, but it doesn't. I mean, I suppose you could set up an ultimate winner, but really it's just to incentivize everybody to take action so that they can get extra things that they see of value. And it does gamify the process and it encourages them to go do it. But it's not like, you're at the end of the day, you're going to pick this big grand prize winner. To do that, what you're really trying to do is build everybody who opts in for a particular offer that you're providing to turn into an affiliate or a referral army for your business. And so if you can find ways to do that, you're going to see a great opportunity for your business to grow. So, and you're also going to build your list, which we talked about last week, which plays a super important role in continuing to sustain your growth.
Yeah. One of the best examples I've seen of this, Ken, is it was an orthodontist who his name was Dr. Jake, and he actually did Where in the World is Dr. Jake contest. And they were just, it was like Flat Stanley, if anybody's heard of that, where kids would get a cutout of Dr. Jake. And this was when traveling was happening more. But he had a contest, and the kids could win a contest if they got the most votes, like what you were talking about. But basically they would take pictures or videos of themselves on any trip, anywhere they were, with their little cutout of Dr. Jake. And it was brilliant. It got tons of user generated content. And of course, there was the voting aspect and then the winning aspect. And that was one of the best ones I've seen like that in that particular field.
Yeah. All right. Awesome. So we're coming up on the hour here. Any last thoughts that you guys have about user generated content?
I was going to say I mean, this has been great. It's very, very important. But don't be chasing after this as the new shiny object. You got to make sure you've got your strategy in place, and there's, the rest of your marketing plan is being executed before you start adding something else like this in.
Or make this I mean, if it is an important component, make it part of your overall strategy so that it integrates naturally, and it can amplify off of everything else that you're doing. I mean, in some businesses, this may be one of the most tactically important things to do, but don't just let it happen willy-nilly,
Yeah, I would say, like you and Ken said, or Jen and Ken said, make it part of a strategy, but it's, this kind of happened with social media. All of a sudden, social media became the shiny object, the silver bullet that's going to fix everything. And it's effective because they don't trust advertising. But it's like reviews. People trust reviews because it's an unbiased opinion. And same thing with user-generated, which reviews are user-generated content, but it's unbiased, and that makes it very effective. But don't think this is the new marketing strategy and this is all you have to do.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah, my last thought was going to be, just like with any marketing, you can't gain momentum and experience unless you get started. So just get started, but dip your toe, along the lines of being strategic. Dip your toe in the water, and if it doesn't get bitten off by the sharks, jump in in a sustainable manner. Like, don't blow your budget, don't blow all your time in this. It's part of a larger strategy, just like you guys said.
All right, so we'll wrap it up there. Thanks everybody for listening or watching, and please, if you like what we talk about on this, subscribe and write a review about us on your favorite podcast platform, and certainly share this. You can do us all a favor if you guys help us share this out and create some user-generated content for this podcast. We would greatly appreciate that. So thanks, everybody, and we'll talk to you next week.